For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter. Hey, Craig, so what is your current favorite donut? I know you mentioned you tried the caramel pretzel.
Well,
wasn't your thing?
Yeah, I followed your lead, and I went and had the pretzel, and I think I learned that unless you get it early in the morning, the pretzel's going to be soggy, and it's going to be a waste of your money and the calories, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it for 3 episodes now, and I was driving by, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to get that donut. And I stopped in the middle of the afternoon on my way to a game store, and it was a terrible experience, Russ. Terrible experience. I cursed your name.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Name.
Let me buy you a coffee real quick. Hey, Craig, is that Ronnie from Mantic Games over there in the corner? Ronnie.
It certainly is.
What are you doing here at Dunkin' Donuts?
Oh, eating donuts and drinking coffee. What do you think?
Excellent. Well chosen. What is your favorite donuts and coffee, sir, here at Dunkin' Donuts? What do you like?
Let me just tell you, coming from the UK, up until recently, and by recently I mean the last 5 years, it was nigh on impossible to buy a donut with the hole in the middle in our country.
What is wrong with your people? What's been the issue?
I once went out, we'd set at Mantic, and I thought, I'm going to take donuts in for everybody. It's not that hard, but I want the glazed ones with the hole in the middle.
Of course you do.
I don't want any of these ones filled with jam and custard.
That's right. You're a rational human. I understand this.
Correct. And I couldn't get him, and I came back in a filthy mood saying, what country are we living in? God damn it, you can't even get a goddamn donut with a hole in the middle of it. So, now I'm over here when I see donuts with holes in the middle with all manner of stuff sprinkling over the top of them. We shove them down.
That's exactly right.
Take them when you can.
Do you think this
Take them when you can.
Is this a royal decree, Manny? Does the Queen not care for donuts with holes in them? Is that a thing, you think?
It's just shocking.
Who can say?
They've filled it full of all manner of filth.
Well, Manny, while you're here, I've been noticing something. I think, Mantic Games, you guys are known for... And those who don't know, Manny, why do I keep calling you? It's Ronnie.
I don't know, but it's starting to get embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. So Ronnie, and I think what's happening here, Ronnie, is I'm conflating the fact that I know you are the man behind Mantic Games. So in my head, it's like Mantic plus Ronnie's Manny. See, that's what's happening in my head, which is inappropriate. I apologize.
I'm going to rename both from now on.
Oh, fair. Okay.
Rename them both.
But
it's going to be entirely symbiotic.
I expect the website to be updated tomorrow.
You've had wonderful.
Our website's a nail. So,
so you've had wonderful success with your own intellectual property, right? With your own ideas and your own fantasy world and your own sci-fi worlds and your own cool Dreadball game and everything. But you did Mars Attacks, and then you did Walking Dead. I'd love to know how you guys decided or got into sort of using other people's IP in your games. How did that sort of whole thing start?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was always, when I set Mantic up, part of the plan. We were going to, license in and license out, kind of was the saying. We were always building up our own IPs. And, we've obviously got the Kings of War world, Mantica, and we've got the Warpath universe, Forge Fathers and Star Saga and the like. But it was always, I think with both of those and with the other miniature games that are out there on the market, I'd seen that quite a lot of IPs struggle because you're trying to explain a whole world. There's how do you have time to develop it? And I think when we were first coming into gaming, there was no choice. If you wanted a miniatures game, there was one on the market, and that's what you got on with.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's not the case. And so I was looking at what was going on and saying, well, why is kind of licensing so popular in every other aspect of the world, but isn't in the miniature gaming world? Why wouldn't it be? If you love, Rick Grimes and his story, why don't you want to play that? Mm-hmm. Well, I think people do. And I think that's where it kind of came from. It came from the fact that the story, you have a strong association with that story, and I want to recreate it. Now, that leads on to some other things, but I thought it was always a great way, particularly in the US, where there isn't that ability to get a demo game necessarily as easily, to have someone stand there and explain, what one of these miniatures is, what a Forge Father is, and what that universe is, and how to play. I mean, how did we all learn to play chess? We didn't sit down with a rule book and start reading it. Our uncle or our dad or brother or sister taught us. And I think what we were trying to hook into is that if you already know the characters in the play, then actually all you need to learn is the mechanics. We know Michonne is going to be a melee specialist because she's got a huge ninja and she chops people up. So I think, it was always a view that we were going to do it. It's then finding out things that both are strong enough intellectual properties, interesting enough intellectual properties that also lend themselves to a wargaming scenario. Breaking Bad is a great license, but I can't see a war game in it. I'm sure there's someone clever than me that can, but you can see how it could be a board game, but I don't see how it could be a war game.
Very low model count.
Yeah, exactly.
Low model count.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I don't know, taking massive amounts of what is it, MDMA or whatever, now shoot everybody in the. I don't know. I can't see the game there. I can see a board game. I can see some of that kind of obvious, but I can't see it as a miniatures game. So the challenge was always finding things that lent themselves to compelling, fun, interesting gaming mechanic, proper, where are the people like us, because we're a toy soldier company. That's principally what we do. We're about the minis and the games to use as minis.
Yep.
Does the IP support that?
Now, how did this work? Was it something like you were passionate about something like Walking Dead, and so you wanted to make the game, or did they come to you, or like how did that idea, like, okay, The Walking Dead seems perfect to me? We were already a huge fan of the comics.
Funny one that. So, actually, interestingly, Mars Attacks came to us.
Okay.
It was right in the pomp of the Kickstarter bananas growth time, and suddenly, so where the answer had always been no, can't afford to do it, be impossible, no chance. It was like, yeah, okay, we can do that. People are loving what we're doing, and I always wanted to do an IP. And straight away, as soon as they called me up, you went, yeah, I can see the game instantly. Big giant stompy robots, flying saucers, assembled minis, Martians, helmets on. Yes, of course. Yep. What a game. I'm in. We were over, so I flew into a Gen Con that year. So it was probably 5 years ago now. So I just added a couple of days on beforehand to New York, because Tops is out of New York. Went down to see them. Got on very well with the guys that were there. And, we took it. They had a great big back art. They had comics. They had lots of the card art, of course. And it was I could see it also a kind of slightly more light-hearted game. And I was briefing it out. I said, no, I want, cars to just be landing on the battlefield randomly somewhere, as if there were big stompy robots throwing it from the adjacent battlefield, and it lands and comes and crushes a load of stuff. So just when you think you've got the game won, burning cows run across the battlefield. A car lands from somewhere. And I think we were probably too conservative. I think we should have done even more of that crazy, wacky stuff. Because I think, but certainly as a war game, it was great fun, and who wouldn't want to play that? So we popped in, we did a deal, we took it to Kickstarter. It was hugely successful. I think didn't quite work at retail. I think it was a little bit. It was one of those projects that probably does work better on Kickstarter, where you can have a really close dialogue with the gamer. Right. The gamer can understand what it is. It wasn't so contemporary. The movie already was, right, I think 20 years old this year, isn't it? Right, so it was 18 years old at the time. It wasn't a living story. So to some of us old timers, it was great fun. And I think to kids, my boys, we played a little bit. They knew who the baddies were. They knew who the goodies were. Even if they didn't know the film at the time, they certainly understood the storyline. Right. And I think it could have worked, but it didn't quite click. It didn't quite get that. It's got a kind of cult following. And because the Kickstarter was so big, and we tooled so much, it doesn't leave a lot of room to add to it. There is a few things, but without the retailers able to stock it. But it did give us a great experience of working with a licensor. And, that was really instrumental because we knew that was a route that we were going to pursue. One every couple of years, but when we get something, and by this point, it was also, that was the kind of dry run. We're only going to be taking things that we really, believe in, but also believe can be successful for the retailers. We're not doing them just to have a big Kickstarter. It has to be something that we believe will sell, like Dungeon Saga does, like Kings of War does, week in, week out, month in, month out, word of mouth, that can bring people into our hobby, can introduce them to it. And then later on, in the hope they'll play Warpath, or they'll play, Dead Zone, or Kings of War Skirmish, whichever is their preference. Right. Or maybe they'll just keep playing that forever. But they've got choices. They're into that. Oh, I really enjoy the lighter end of the miniature gaming market. Or, whoa, no, I'm loving this. I want to go deep. I want a 500-man army. Boom, boom, boom. Who knows?
Right.
So, by the time that had been in and come around, it was then a case of, what should we do next? And we'd gone through lists and lists and lists of types of things we wanted. And bizarrely, one of the things that had never gone on it was that a guy had given me, in the office, had got the 2 Walking Dead compendiums as a prize draw, and he didn't want them, and so I swapped him something. And because I'd always had a background in reading comics, but I'd always been largely DC, but I'd read plenty of everything. And in the last few years, I'd started reading some of the more, some of the independent titles, such as Fables and, Queen and Country, some of these slightly more off-piste storylines. And, I got these 2 journals, and actually my 10-year-old son, which is bad parenting, got his hands on them and read them. And sat there and devoured them. There you go. And if I'd read them first, I might have stopped him, but he sat there and, wow, these are good. So then I read through them, and they were just brilliant reads. Absolutely, just if I'm sure you read the comic, but he just draws you in. Robert just tells you a story, and you, oh man, what are you doing? For God's sake, are you staying up late reading, turning the pages? And as I was saying, we've got to think about what licenses we do. My kind of 10-year-old son just looked at me like, Dad, you are an idiot, aren't you? I said, what? He says, The Walking Dead. We've got to do The Walking Dead. Yeah, you're right, aren't you? Yeah, okay. There you go. So I kind of found out the details, and again, before, maybe it was just after an Adepticon, I went over to LA and hung in there, and I got some chat that was introduced us to a few people. He understood what we were trying to do, and I got the details for Skybound and arranged to go see them. So I get in my taxi and drive over, and obviously I'm absolutely awestruck. I'm in the Skybound offices. This is where The Walking Dead is. This is the central part of The Walking Dead, and here's some of the figures coming from the TV show. And I walk into the licensing guy's office, a guy called Sean, and I'm trying my very best to not be like, oh my God, oh wow. No, yeah, cool, I do this all the time, it's no problem, whatever. And he says, are you running a Kickstarter at the moment? About 10 minutes in. Right. And I was explaining what we do. I said, yeah. He said, a dungeon one. I said, yeah, Dungeon Saga. It's going really well. It's, it's the dungeons, all assembled minis and everything else. And yeah, it's doing really, really well. He says, man, I was looking at that this morning with the other guy in the office out there. We were thinking of backing that. Said, I used to play 40K. I was like, oh, right. Phew, someone that understands what we do. This might just work.
Nice.
So, yeah, I think what would have been a difficult pitch, because they look at it and go, well, yeah, but, if we do a Walking Dead Risk, they do 100,000 units every year and they're going to do it for 5 years. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I can't promise you those kind of numbers, I'm afraid, but what we're going to make you is the coolest and sexiest thing you've ever seen. And, I'd actually sculpted them a Rick, and I said, look, this is what the range will look like. And yeah, he's been very supportive, hugely supportive. And, we're not, they've got computer game licenses out there, like the Telltale Games, they're absolute A-list computer game titles, but they've been absolutely fantastic, and they care about it, which is both brilliant because they care about it, and they make sure the whole brand and the whole range really all feels very great together. And we've got this year's show special is Lee and Clementine from the Telltale series, which is awesome that we can do the miniatures from a computer game that were never even written in the comic, but a part of the comic license, and people have gone crazy for Lee and Clementine. But at the same time, because they care, they want everything to be right. And occasionally saying, yes, I know, that his smile is slightly wrong, but you're looking at it at, 8 inches high on your computer screen, and it's only going to be 28 millimeters tall. When we made the tool, they're passionate about every part of it, every packaging, everything goes through them, and they look at it really carefully. So it's wonderful, but you're dealing with an absolute tier 1 license because everything has to be spot on. Because
they're former miniature wargamers, do they actually get to the point of like, hey, Ronnie, I played this the other day, and I have to tell you that, Rick doesn't fight quite right. Like, do they get to that level of detail?
Yeah, I mean, they have the main guy comes more from the aesthetic, both from packaging and the feel. But there is the guy who he has kind of sweeping up behind Ben. Is a very good gamer, and they are all gamers. So they definitely, we've played with them, and the first couple of times that I took the game into Ben was like, I think I'll send you a few notes on this. Usually it's just because I didn't know the rules myself, and I'd forgotten, that the rules writers had written all those things in, but I was playing an earlier version and I'd forgotten it. But yeah, no, all the way through that, they're still, how about? And I think we're looking, if we can, to do a kind of miniatures board game that would go direct to retail, wouldn't go to Kickstarter, would go direct to retail sometime next year, sometime 2018, which again would, even now where I think, the miniatures are assembled, they're a great size, you don't even need to paint them if you don't want. You can obviously tell which are the zombies, which are the walkers, which are the survivors.
Right.
It's still a collectible miniatures game, that, and I think there's probably a space in front of it for a more, board gamey type feel, so like a Dungeon Saga type game. Maybe Negan taking the Sanctuary is one of the ideas we pitched. How did he come to get the Sanctuary and clear it all out of all of those, and Dwight and Sammy in the early days? How about we did that as a complete game in a box?
Right.
Yeah. Some of those things which could open up that board game crowd to miniature gaming in a way that, even though I think All Out War is about as light a starting point as a miniature game can be, it's still very obviously a miniature game. Stores are like, we don't do miniature games. Like, well, there is a mat in there,
There's a mat.
It's not hard. But, no, that's the line. Okay, here's a board game then. Oh, yeah, it's a board game. Let's go.
What were some of the things you learned? What were some of the things you learned working with an IP like The Walking Dead that you didn't expect? I mean, you'd done Mars Attack, so coming into this, you probably felt like you knew most of the pitfalls, but were there any surprises for you along the way?
Yeah, I guess there's always some surprises. It's a good question. I mean, I think just how big it is kind of exciting and terrifying in roughly equal measure. And I think one of the things that people say, well, what's next? I'll say Walking Dead. Then what? Walking Dead. You've got to, like with this, like with anything, it's a huge commitment, both from the company side, but also, when someone picks up a new gaming system and gets passionate about it, they want to see it supported. And so I think one of the things that we've done right from day one, 1/3 of all the releases are direct to retail. So and it's for two reasons. First, and Kickstarters have never complained, but if they complain, oh no, I want it all. You say, well, actually, you can get it all. Just go to your local store or come online, you can get it. But the other thing is, if you get a Kickstarter today, and it's all delivered, and you've got 18 months worth of product, you've got the first 4 waves of releases, as these guys do. What's going to keep it fresh in 6 months' time?
Right.
What's going to get you excited about just how to change your game dynamics? You'll have finalised your team. You'll have finalised your gang of survivors. Your friend will have his gang of survivors, and you'll have played it 10 times because you've loved it. You've played it to death. So you actually need new things to keep the hoary old vets fresh, the ones that do have everything.
Right.
And to pop down to your store and for $20 to pick up a new booster or two, great. Isn't that what we all want? And then we've done the RV. So I think it's really excited with this one, but it's so obvious to make sure it stays fresh, to make sure there's new things coming out for it. And therefore, what we forget with hobbyists is how many of us go out on the first day and buy it. Well, we all mean to, but there's always something, and okay, I've got it, but I've not yet painted it, so I've not yet played it. A lot of people don't play these games until they've painted everything, because they want their first experience to be, I've painted it, I've played it, I've learned the rules, I've studied it, and I'm taking it to the club. Right. Well, people are just taking it to the club now. They got the Kickstarter back in November, December, and they're taking it now because it's taken that long to get it all done and ready for gaming with. Right. So it's a multi-year commitment, and if you can keep it fresh and you can keep recruiting, and I think this game is one of those that can do that, this really could be the opportunity for us to become a staple in every gaming store in the US, and awesome. Comic stores too. And I think that's what I've got to make sure that we don't rush on to the next thing, because when you start building up a miniatures collection, you want to see new things, you want to see a community grow, and be able to get a game.
Right. Have you noticed? Are there? Has the Mantic, since you have now this awesome Walking Dead product, have you noticed an influx of sort of passionate Walking Dead fans who weren't already Mantic fans? Like, and has that changed the dynamic of people? Like, are the Walking Dead folks so passionate about that story and that world that they get really into the details as well, and they come back and say, well, actually, or even I love that guy. Like, have you sensed sort of that passion sort of happening there?
Yeah, more in the positive way, actually. I think we did, and also Skybound, as we were saying, we're very careful to make sure that we got the stories right and the feel of the characters right. Now, of course, at this point, there's probably only 25 survivors out. There's about another 50, 65 coming out in about 10 days' time. It's about shipping on the 11th of May. It's waves 2, 3, and 4. So if we've got something wrong, it's probably going to be in those second waves rather than the first one, because the first one's just Atlanta camp, some of the basic stuff. But Touch would have got that right. But the passion that people have, is fantastic. And I think, I think the challenge for us is just getting that story out to the US gaming fans, to the US Walking Dead fans, that, this is a game that they can play if they want to recreate. We forget that because this is a light game for us, it's probably still the most complicated game a non-gamer will play.
Right. Yeah.
And they need that hand-holding through, I love this comic, I watched this TV show, to explain this game to me.
Right.
What happens? And I've been gaming all my life, and the first 2 or 3 times that I played it, still go on and watch the mechanics. We know what we're looking for. How does it move? How does it fight? What's the stat line? But, when you see these cards with a load of dials and numbers and coloured things, coloured dice next to them, what does all that mean? Now, I know it is easy to play because I'm playing with my 9-year-old who is already, right, I'm tuning him up with that. They're having that. She's having this equipment. He's having that. And, when I come down, what he's basically done is got all of the character cards, got all of the equipment cards, and built an army list.
Yep.
Gone through it. She's got the katana. He's got his pistol and his hatchet. He's my main leader. There's Rick. I love Carl. So every time Carl dies in a game, the bottom lip comes out. But what he's doing is army list building, which is part of our hobby. It's a joyous part. Right. And he's doing it intuitively because he's putting the cards down and he's putting the equipment decks next to them. And as I'm sure you guys have done on many occasions, you build your army roster while you should be doing something else. Right. And it's kind of an intellectual fun exercise. Always go and buy all that. Even have it on your collection, but just writing out army list is great fun.
Nice.
Yep.
Indeed. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad. It sounds like it's just having a great amount of traction, and it doesn't sound like you have any regrets at all. It sounds like it's just working out great. You're looking forward to just keeping on trucking with it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it deserves it. There's a whole load coming, and we've had some. We've managed to do this. A resin premium resin collector's kit, which was really exciting. I mean, it nearly killed on brand new resin factory. The guys still aren't talking to me there. I was like, yeah, come on, we've got to do that moment. It's so relevant at this time. And, Negan, it's got Glenn before and after. So Glenn's got two different heads.
That's
for obvious reasons. Spoiler alert. Yeah, and then all of them on the ground, which are great little objectives for, future games. But it's that real premium, exclusive collector's piece, all the way through to extra equipment cards. And, yeah, it's a really nice... so it's in a nice place, and I'm hoping that as long as we've got to make sure that acts as a recruiter for that wider audience that I do believe is there.
So you mentioned
that
spoilers.
Takes time to build up.
So before we go, you mentioned spoilers, and is there a way I can buy into The Walking Dead if I've only seen like the first 2 seasons and not have a spoiler accidentally purchased?
Yeah. So the way we're releasing it is we're releasing it in line with the way the comics developed.
Right.
So the very first game, we kind of slightly skew that because we just give you 4 randoms to fight against. Mm-hmm. It's a squad that they meet. It's an enemy, gang of enemy they meet further down the line. But they were kind of just the first inconsequential group that we could find that can also be part of your gang. They're just randoms.
Right.
But it's Rick and Carl versus 4 randoms versus... the terrain that bites you and tries to kill you, which are the walkers, which are just as dangerous as the other guys. Giving you, in the first game, the PvP story, which is essentially, I think, where you end up with a compelling game. With Mars Attacks, we tried to make it all narrative, but it wasn't quite narrative enough to be a board game. So it fell between, it was neither a war game for the war gamers, nor was it a board game for the board gamers. With this one, what we've done is we've gone... Here's a war game for the war gamers, and the expansions such as Days Gone By, which is the Atlanta Camp expansion, or what's the next one? Herschel's Farm, which is the second season, which is where they're meeting Herschel's Farm area, where they meet Herschel and some of those other guys. These expansions, which are only, I think, $39.99, $20, $34.99 kind of dollars. You get extra cards, you get some extra rules, but you also get what happened during that comic run as a narrative campaign. So you can take your miniatures, and I literally played it tonight with my son, the first one. We've played loads of PvP and killed each other, but now we go, hey, let's play co-op, and what we've got to do is, get in there, and I think the very first scenario is Dwayne and Morgan and Rick trying to break into the police station to get the weapons. So it says you're only allowed knives, hand weapons. So you can take a spade of 20 points, take the 3 characters, set the walkers up this way, and you've succeeded when you get to the other corner over there and bash in the door. And so the storyline comes out in line with the comics, and you can recreate those. And up until... I think the third pack, there's hardly any player versus player scenarios because all of it was about a group of you fighting against the walkers.
Right.
They were the threat. So it's quite nice, and it avoids spoilers until later on. So
I just got to buy them in series order, and I'm fine. Right.
Yep, and they're big numbers on them because they were all too subtle. Days Gone By, I'm like, that's well and good. What is it? That's Atlanta Camp. Is that brilliant. The first one? Yes. Put a 1 on the box. Put a big giant 1. And then Prelude to Woodbury, which is the introduction of the governor, which is where he comes along. It's actually his story as he develops the game. Make that 0. That's not part of the series. 1, then 2, then 3. I got it, yeah. So then people will buy them in order because that's what we want to do. When they go into a comic store, you're like, which is the first one? Put a 1 on the side.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's great.
So,
well, Ronnie, it was so great to... Craig, do you have any questions for Ronnie here? We probably should let him go. The Dunkin' Donuts guy over here is giving me the evil eye.
Yeah, no, I don't... with all the time travel and the matter transmission, I don't even know how Ronnie's still awake.
I don't either, Ronnie. Ronnie, what time is it over there for you right now?
It is 2:28 in the morning.
Oh, you are
for the
such a trooper.
We need to let this man go.
Really.
I'm a big fan. I did want to little for a moment just say I was a big fan of the TV show. For the Kickstarter, I got super excited. I'm all in. I can't wait for Wave 2. And because of the Kickstarter, because it was based on the comic books, not the TV show, I then went in and I got those compendiums you were just talking about, and I'm all caught up to date on the comic book too. So you dragged me even further into their world as you brought me forward into yours. So it was very exciting and mission accomplished on my account.
Well done. It was interesting because one of the things we'd done with Mars Attacks was they had a couple of comics, graphic novels that had been done, and we were saying in it, should we sell it? And Robert had said to Sean, listen, if they've not read the comic by now, they're never going to read the comic. And I'm like, I'm not sure amongst wargamers,
Yeah.
I think, particularly in the UK where there isn't such a big comic tradition, I said if we, made those comics available, a lot of people would have bought them. But it sounds like it got you anyway.
Right.
Oh, it did.
Exactly.
Well, and you're absolutely right about the wargamer aspect, because we're completists, right? We want to do everything and we want to get everything. Yep. And if everything means these 3 giant comic book compendiums, that was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, no, it's a great read, isn't it? And that's fun. Yeah. It's great. It's I'm just reading Compendium 2 again because that's kind of what's coming out of this next wave, and just to refresh my stories because people say, "Do you remember when?" So no, I can't.
Yeah.
It's great fun. I think you'll have real fun with the wave stuff that's shipping in the next couple of weeks. It's
the stuff I have so far is phenomenal, and I can't wait.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I'm loving it.
Well, awesome. Well, Ronnie, we'll let you go. Get back to bed there, sir. And thank you again. It was great to meet you here in Dunkin' Donuts, and we'll have you on the main show here in about a week.
I look forward to it. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.